See, no, we don't want that. Hold on. We don't want that. Here we go. Okay. So what we were learning about was yesterday is what can one do as far as returning a merchandise that is defective in some way, that it has some kind of blemish. And does it make a difference? Morning, Mazel Tov, Moish. Does it make a difference if the defect can be repaired or not? Okay. So kol mum shehu beguf hamekach yochel hakona levatlo kishelo nitain letakno. He says any kind of defect in merchandise, the buyer can nullify the sale if it's not fixable. O im yitukan yera'a kemekach acher legamri shetikein, or if it'll be clearly visible that this is a repaired object and not the original. O shelo nitain letakno lachzir l'shleimuto mibli lahotzi hotzoos merubos, or if it's going to cost an exorbitant amount in order to fix it, nechshav kamum gamur v'hakoni yachol levatel hamekach. So this is considered to be a complete defect or blemish, and the buyer is therefore able to nullify the sale. But if there's a defect that can easily be repaired, to restore it to its original state, that will not nullify the sale. And therefore, now, of course, when it comes to things that are made out of plastic today, it's hard to imagine how could that possibly be fixed, right? So you have to really put your mind back into when workmanship was workmanship and things weren't made out of plastic. So things are made out of more expensive materials like wood and metal and things like that. A lot of times things are repairable, and therefore the sale will not be able to be nullified. V'lachein, Ruvain shemachar bayis l'shimon be'ir acheres, v'nitbarer shekodem gemar hamekach nichnasu goyim o ganovim l'bayit v'kilkulu mashu b'bayis. So that's the case we were talking about. So Ruvain sells a house to Shimon. And before Shimon is able to take possession, um, vandals come in and damage the house and the contents of the house, and let's say maybe the light fixtures and other fixtures that are attached to the wall. Im hatseva o she'akru delatot v'chalonot mimakomam, whether it be the paint on the walls or they detached the doors or broke the windows. The Achshav Shimon rotze lachzer bo, and now Shimon wants to back out of the deal. The Reuven tona sheyinakel Shimon min hadamim kedei sheyachzer habayis lekadmuso, and the seller says, "No, I don't want you to void the sale. I'll just deduct the cost of the repairs of all of these items, and we'll call it a day." Hadinim Reuven ve'in Shimon yachol lachzer bo. So Reuven is in the right, and Shimon cannot back out of the sale if they've already signed the sale agreement. Okay, so, and the basis for that is that houses get refurbished all the time. Aval im haya nimsa kotel habayit ra'ua shezeh beguf habayit afshu vein rotza letakno sheyehi kamol chadash kevin sheyesh mum beguf habayit yachol shimon lachzer bo me'amekach. It's only if the damage is structural damage to the point where the damage that's been caused to the house actually compromises the structure. That's where Shimon can back out of the deal. So that's what we were up to yesterday. V'chein hadin b'chol mum kisheinu beguf hamekach yochol hamocher lomer lakone ani ashalem demei hatikun. So, and similarly, any kind of defect that's not in the body of the merchandise, the seller can say to the buyer, look, I'm going to pay for whatever the repair is. Kigon anake lecha mehadamim sheshilamta ba'ad habayis o hametaltalim. I will deduct the cost of repair. O yachol omar lo lekoine etein lecha laoto davar sheshilamta avuro shu shalem mibeli shum pega. Or he could say to the buyer, I will give you the same item that you paid for, I'll replace it. In other words, let's another example of where the buyer cannot nullify the sale is if the seller says, I'll replace it with another piece of merchandise that's exactly the same. There, the buyer can't demand a money back guarantee as long as the seller has the ability to replace the item. So halachically, you can't back out of that.
Within the proper time frame. No, I need it next week. You can wait a month or 2 months.
I guess within an acceptable time frame to the buyer. If the buyer says, I need this merchandise for a specific event and you can't deliver, so then you can nullify the sale. He says, however, if there's a prevailing custom or a convention that is already in place within either society or that particular industry, so then you follow the minhag. So, for example, if the convention within society is to say this is not an acceptable defect, and therefore the buyer is entitled to completely void the sale, so then you do have a right to void the sale. It all depends on the current convention. So, and similarly, if the stipulation was made explicitly at the time of the purchase, that I'm only purchasing this on the condition that it doesn't have any defect whatsoever, and if not, I can void the sale, so then you can void the sale as well. So a lot of it will depend on the conditions that are instituted. Okay, so that concludes his discussion of Mekach Tos. And now we're going to start a new portion of halacha called Shlichus. I just have to bring up the new packet. Just give me a second. We were doing 6, now we're doing 7. No, that's not it. Oops. One sec. Okay, it's in here. Here we go. Stop the share. Here we go. Okay, din shlichus. So the laws of shlichut. Now, shlichut is proxyship, and normally we say shlucho shel adam kemoso, that a person's proxy has the same halachic status as the person himself, whether to enact transactions or whether to you can get married al yedei shaliach, you can deliver a get al yedei shaliach. So as it pertains to Choshen Mishpat, we'll see what the limitations and the powers of a shaliach are. Okay, she'ela. Misha nasa shaliach liknot schora mehagoy, vehechzer lo hagoy odef yoter mehatzorech, o sheta b'mida o b'mishkal uminyan. A person dispatches a messenger to go make a purchase from a non-Jew, the non-Jew makes an error in the favor of the buyer. So it turns out that the messenger has received more money than, or has paid less money than he was supposed to. Yesh lisho lemi shayechet tosefet zu shel ta'ut hagoy, ha'im lameshaleach o shahashliach zoche betosefet zu. So who gets to keep the error? Now this, of course, is assuming that you're allowed to keep the amount. Let's say you bring it to the attention of the non-Jew that you made a mistake, and the non-Jew says, "Don't worry about it. You can keep the extra change." So the question now remains, who is going to get to keep the extra change? Does the shaliach get to keep it, or does the dispatcher get to keep it?
Dispatcher of the owner.
Well, the guy who's making the purchase. So we call him the dispatcher, the mishaleach. Or do they split it? Which is fair? So misha shalach shaliach liknot lo schora migoy o shliach shenishlach limkor logoy schora mesuyemet v'hagoy ta'a b'cheshbon. If a person sends a shaliach to enact a transaction, and an error is made by the Gentile that's in favor of the dispatcher, v'chein hashaleach shliach lekabel mehagoy kesef sheyechayiv lo v'echzer lamashaleach odef yoter mehad sarich. Or let's say I dispatch someone to receive cash from a non-Jew, and he ends up giving the shaliach more than he was supposed to. Hashaliach zacha b'chol hatosefet. That normally the normative halacha is that the shaliach is entitled to that overpay, that error. Umashi amarnu hashaliach zacha b'tosefet. Kol ze davke kishiyada hashaliach betot kodem sheba'u liyad hamishaleach. But that's only when the extra amount was discovered by the shaliach, by the proxy, before he handed it over to the dispatcher. Aval imlo noda la shaliach betos hahi unisanu liyad hamishaleach zacha b'chol hatosefes. But if after the fact that he gives the extra money to the dispatcher, he discovers, or it is discovered, that an excess of money was paid, then the dispatcher gets to keep the money and you don't give it to the shaliach. Now, what is this based on? What is the source?
Yeah, I'm surprised actually, because I thought the shaliach replaces the dispatcher, and so the dispatcher would get everything to the shaliach.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's
That is the extension.
yeah, extension.
It's extension of.
You would think that he's an extension of the dispatcher, and so therefore anything that comes into the hands of the shaliach should be considered to be coming into the hands of the dispatcher.
Smiled or did something himself that warranted him getting it, or a particular Muslim maybe that he gets it. But
what is the basis of the halacha? He says it's Siman Kuf Pei Gimel Sif Zayin. So let's just take a quick look at the source in the Shulchan Aruch.
This also, he has the obligation to tell the dispatcher that he made extra money on it too. There's no obligation.
He has no obligation to tell him. So Sholach Shalucho lekabel ma'ot me ha'oved chochavim. V'ta ha'oved chochavim v'natan lo yoter hakol lashaliach. If a person sent his shaliach to receive cash that is owed to him from a non-Jew, and the non-Jew accidentally gives more than what he owes, assuming that in this case you don't have to give it back to the goy, for either because the goy is forgiving or it's not possible to find the goy, or there's not going to be any chilul Hashem by keeping it, which is a rare occurrence. So then the shaliach gets to keep the overpay, and it seems he gets to keep whatever benefit is coming to him. So the Ramah says, "V'davka shiyada hashaliach betot kodem shaba'u liyad hamishleach," but that's specifically if it's still within the hands of the shaliach at the time when the error is discovered. Aval imlo yada betot tahu v'natnu liyad hamishaleach hakol shel hamishaleach. But if you don't discover the error until after it's already been handed over to the dispatcher, so then the dispatcher keeps it all. ומשהה עושה שכר עם עובד כוכבים, ובא חברו וסייעו והיטו וכוכבים ומיתו משכב במניין, חולקן הרווח בין שעשה עמו בשכר או בחינם. So if someone was doing business with a heathen and his friend enables him or helps him to receive more, and it seems here, let's see. The friend is able to help him get more money from the heathen. Cholkin harevach bein sha'asa imo bischar o bechinam. So this is a separate issue. This is the issue when I'm involved in a deal with a non-Jew, and I'm able to through whatever method of slick marketing, my friend is able to get more money from him. So then I have to split that profit with my friend. In other words, it's not just that he's entitled to a commission, but if I was willing to take a lower price and my friend is able to get a higher price, a higher amount from the guy, so then I have to split the profit with him. So that's not so much having to do with shaliach, but he's sort of aiding and abetting me to get more money in the transaction. So I have to split that profit with him.
So this is not an employee, it's different from employee.
Yeah, it's not an employee. He's not hired for that purpose. But he says, Bein sha'asa imo bischar o bechinam. It doesn't matter whether he was paid to do this or not. So even if I pay a guy to help me, I guess it depends on the employee
So
contract.
if it is an employee,
But I suppose it depends on the employment contract. If the employment contract is that I'm paying you, let's say for a long-term employment, let's say you're my long-term employee, it's not just I'm hiring you for this one situation. So I guess the halacha will change depending upon the circumstances and the terms of the retention of this person. If the deal is that I'm going to pay you a fee to assist me in getting more money from from this person, from the buyer, and indeed through his marketing efforts, I do get more from the buyer. So then, if it was understood that that was his sole compensation, so then he's not entitled to additional compensation. But if there was no stipulation other than I'll pay you for your time and your efforts, and then it turns out that there's a huge windfall as a result of his efforts, technically I have to split the profits with him if there was no other stipulation made at the time that I retained him, which is surprising because you wouldn't think that the law would be that way. Let's see if we can take a look at the Aruch HaShulchan over here and see if there's any okay. So the question is, where would I find this in the Aruch HaShulchan? Let's see. Hold on. So this is, okay, right. Shliach shegana v'gazal o b'to'us she'eno chozer hakol l'shaliach debidvar iser she'asa shliach lama yihya lama shaliach chelek bazeh. If a shaliach ends up committing an iser, like stealing, o gazal o b'to'us, or if there was an overpay to him, where you would not be obligated to return the overpay, then the shaliach gets to keep whatever he stole or whatever was accidentally overpaid to him, because there's no reason to say that the mishalech should have a portion of this. V'chein betos halo haya biyado la'achzir hatos, or if there was an overpay and the shaliach chooses not to return the overpay, he gets to keep it. B'davka betos cheshbon kigon shayitzarach litein la'shaliach meyazuz b'nasan asara yoter. He says, but that's only if, let's say, the purchaser overpays the shaliach for what he owes to the dispatcher. Why? It's because the shaliach has chosen to keep the overpay and not reveal it to the person who is overpaid. And it's almost like he's stealing. And whatever he's stolen, he's allowed to keep for himself. So, for example, if he was only supposed the buyer was only supposed to pay 100, but he pays 110 instead. So then, in that situation, the shaliach gets to keep the extra 10. Aval betos mekach kagon shahitzarach litain esrim litros benosan shloshim yachloku da'avshe betos nosan es hayeterim mikol makom kevin shal kol panim kol mashenosan yoter betotu al pi mamon hamishaleach logora mehosif al davar sheyesh lo kitzva diachloku. But that's only if there was an error made in the payment. Let's say the error was not made in the payment, but the error was made regarding the commodity. So, for example, I send a dispatcher to pick up a pallet. You're right, a pallet, right?
Yeah.
A pallet of goods, and by accident, the person who the guy's picking it up from gives him 2 pallets of goods instead of 1 pallet, or he was supposed to pick up 2 pallets and he gets 3 pallets instead. So in that situation, whatever is overpaid is split between the two.
It's overshipped.
It's overshipped. And the reason for that is because the dispatcher, the mishaleach, the guy who's sending the shaliach, is responsible, at least in part, for getting the overpay, because that was part of in other words, it's because that was part of the purchase. Part of the purchase. So the Torah distinguishes when there's an overpay in cash, where we say that the shaliach, through whatever, either through his efforts or because there was a mistake made, that has nothing to do with the original 100 that was owed. The guy gives 110 instead of 100, so we say that that extra cash was an error, and therefore the shaliach gets to keep it. If, however, it's an error in how much merchandise, and it's in favor of the dispatcher, that they split because he's adding on to what was already, I guess you make a distinction. He says, I'm not sure, I'm having a little bit of difficulty trying to understand the logical distinction.
If the shaliach is able to keep this money
Yeah.
that was overpaid,
Right.
and a week later, the purchaser calls the dispatcher and says, I'm just checking, I overpaid. I gave your driver an extra, can I have it back, please?
Yeah.
So number
So,
one, Chil Hashem. Number two, you're telling me that the shaliach himself can keep that money. Now he's long gone. Now the person who sent the shaliach in the first place, he's responsible for the stuff that's over. That doesn't.
Like there should be a difference between a tip, thanks for your extra efforts.
That's different. That's completely different.
Gave it to him.
So thank you
right.
for the driver, but to actually overpay for the goods, for the cash, we're making a distinction
Like
between.
if you go
cash
to the
and-
supermarket and you get change from the cashier and it's wrong, you should give it back.
You're supposed to give, well, here's the halacha. The halacha is that technically you're allowed to keep it if it's a non-Jew who makes the error, but to make a Kiddush Hashem, you're supposed to give it back. Okay? So in other words, in order to avoid a Chilul Hashem or to make a Kiddush Hashem, you're supposed to give back the overpay. Especially if there's a fear that that they're testing you. Okay,
Like the terrible teaching.
okay. I know it's a bothersome teaching, but the fact of the matter is that a number of poskim emphasize the fact that you should never exploit an error that is made by a non-Jew.
I mean, I
And-
can understand an error, but a regular non-Jew.
Right, so
What if he's a Christian?
the term that's used is an akum, a heathen, an idolater. And a lot of poskim say that that doesn't apply to modern day Christians in a Western society. So that's why when we learn this halacha, we have to say that we're talking about a situation on a practical application level. Remember, this is written 500 years ago, but on a practical level, or in the Aruch HaShulchan's case, it's written 120 years ago, and you're still dealing with anti-Semites. But on a practical level, when you're dealing with good people in Western civilization, so then you should always make sure that you don't exploit the error of the person on the other side of the table. So
Okay,
so that's number one. And that's why I said, let's say we're talking about a situation where the guy overpays, the shaliach brings it to his attention, and he says, don't worry, you can keep it. Okay, so in that situation, the shaliach is entitled to keep the overpay, but when it comes to an accidental a delivery of like an overshipment, extra delivery of goods, that's divided between the shaliach and the dispatcher. That's what the Torah says.
So
Now, of
there's
course,
one more case here.
Yeah,
You said
okay.
that he said, if he overpaid him and he said, don't worry about it, that's fine.
yeah,
But if you overpaid him because he made a mistake,
yeah. So yeah, I bring it to his attention. You made a mistake, and he said it's not a big deal. Just
that's fine, as long as you open, if the guy who's buying the goods knows that doesn't know and he wants that, well, why would I overpay?
what do you mean? Why would I
Guy
overpay?
He made a mistake and he overpaid, he gave him 110 instead of $100.
You're talking about the shaliach who's picking up the money from the buyer.
Yes,
So we notify the buyer, either the shaliach or the dispatcher notifies the buyer. You gave my driver too much money.
right.
Okay, and the guy says, "Don't worry about it."
If the guy who's paying says it's cool, that's fine. But if he wants the money, he doesn't want to, he's not into the tipping business and saying there's all let's say it's a substantial amount of money that he made a mistake.
So that-
I had this like not so long ago. I had a customer who overpaid me $1,000 in cash. And when I came back to the office, and we always, I counted it and I called him right away and I said, you overpaid me $1,000. I'll take it. He says, I'll take it off the next one. Thank you. Like he says, you know what? I thought I made a mistake because now I'm looking in what I have in my till and there wasn't the same amount of money. That
Right,
would,
right.
so if I had a shaliach who was like a driver who was doing it for me, we're saying that driver could have kept that $1,000 when he comes back to pay me the amount of money, let's say it was $10,000, he paid 11, he can keep that $11,000. However, you have to split, but the cash.
He gets
can
to keep.
That just like, whoa. Whoa. I find that very.
Yeah, so I think it'll
flow.
depend on the
It's-
industry. In your kind of business, first of all, the shaliach would typically be bringing back a sealed envelope, and we would delivering it to his boss. Right?
Necessarily, sometimes they count it with my driver, they count it right there.
Okay.
It's not necessarily because you have to,
Yeah, but the driver, how's he supposed to know how much he's supposed to?
oh, I tell you, the guy works.
So you would tell him you're going to
I
pick
say
up.
you're picking up, $4,863. And they'll pay him out and they'll count it, because then he can't come back afterwards, like, the guy I'm selling it to would say, I counted it in front of them. It was all there when I gave it to you, tell me that some of it's missing now, I'm sorry, you signed for it. That's it. So it's just, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't stem. Not else, non-Jew, I understand what was written, there's anti-Semitic, like, I'm just talking, it's practical. And then does it work consistently that if something bad goes wrong, is the shaliach mechuyev to pay that back? If he took of the $5,000, and then there was $4,900? Like, are we gonna be consistent going across the board that the shaliach is always responsible? So he gets the good, does he also have to pay for the bad?
Yeah, usually the shaliach doesn't have that level of liability.
Or he gets a
Unless
gift when he gets the extra money?
unless he was given explicit instructions, pick up $5,000 and he only picks up $4,000.
Right.
So then there could be times when the shaliach will be liable to make up to pay for those damages or whatever cost it'll be to get the extra 1,000. Okay, but this is of course this is a cursory review. So let's see where we go with this.
So,
Oh, it's time. Okay, so we'll have to continue this tomorrow.
This is,
No, it's not. It's not simple at all.
If you think of a marketplace, right, like let's say a shul, you send your shaliach, and the shaliach may not even know who bought it for